set on the last day of camp in the hot summer of 1981, Wet Hot American Summer follows a group of counselors who are each trying to complete their unfinished business before the day ends. The entire summer of pent-up sexual frustrations, unresolved post-traumatic stress, pending separations, and, of course, the talent show, all weigh heavily on the minds and groins of counselors and campers alike. Directed by David Wayne, Wet Hot American Summer was released at Sundance in 2001, where it was critically panned. Wow, I hated something fierce. It was so depressing, I almost started to cry. Despite selling out theaters at Sundance, the film, with a budget of $1.8 million, premiered in 2 New York movie theaters, only grossing $300,000, all while receiving abhorrent reviews. The film, upon its release, by all accounts, was a critical and commercial failure. After Wet Hot American Summer was released on DVD in January 2002, the cult began to grow. Within a couple of years, fans were attending midnight screenings in New York City dressed as characters from the film, including the Tin Can. Having launched the careers of multiple current A-list actors, including Elizabeth Banks, Joe Lo Truglio, and even Oscar-nominated Bradley Cooper, who missed his graduation at the Film Actors Studio to attend the Wet Hot shoot as his first feature film, there was no debate that the cast, from seasoned actors to the green newcomers, was chock full of talent. Its use of theatrical failure created a meta layer to their comedy. They demand the viewer to pay attention to reused sound cues multiple times in a row, or obvious continuity errors.
Hey Neil, what's up?
Victor abandoned the raft trip, and now the kids are about to go over.
The film was unappreciated in its time, but as word of mouth and DVDs were passed around, Wet Hot American Summer went from failure to a certified cult classic, spawning 2 Netflix original spin-off series, a series of comic books, and even a tabletop RPG game. I recognized it as a new wave of comedy. Chris Maloney, who plays Gene, the Vietnam War veteran turned camp cook, stated regarding his first impression of the film, and he was correct. Not only was Wet Hot American Summer a meta-comedy, a genre ahead of its time, but it was also ahead of its time in its portrayal of taboo issues. Wet Hot American Summer uses several devices such as overt theatricality, reality, and theatricality signals and effects, as well as camp, to create a satirical film that fulfills at least 2 of the functions of pop culture. That is, specifically to entertain and bring pleasure, as well as raise the consciousness of viewers by subverting common but regressive film tropes from the 1980s to the 2000s. Wet Hot takes these tropes, once accepted as cultural norms of their era, and creates a satirical frame wherein we can engage with these tropes in a different and more progressive way. Wet Hot American Summer is an ensemble comedy which has approximately 8 storylines that all interconnect and weave together. One storyline I want to focus on is the relationship between Ben and McKinley. In the film, McKinley's friends, JJ and Gary, are focused on helping him hook up with a woman by the end of the day, despite McKinley not showing any interest.
I'm gonna catch up with you later, okay? Get McKinley laid!
Later, JJ and Gary find McKinley engaging in a secret wedding ceremony where he becomes wedded to the drama counselor, Ben, officiated by the camp director. JJ and Gary are shocked at this revelation and refer to him as a slur commonly used against gay men.
McKinley's a with Ben.
What are we gonna do?
When considering the cultural context this was made in, satirizing coming-of-age films from the 80s and the 2000s, characters simply existing as queer people within these films were included often to simply be the butt of the joke.
You know how I know that you're gay? You like the movie Made in Manhattan?
What are you looking at, you peckerhead?
Nice uniform. Makes me wish I'd worn my sailor outfit.
Even well after 2001, mainstream coming-of-age films continued to be wildly homophobic, with queer characters often facing verbal, emotional, and physical abuse on screen in the name of humor.
In every single way, yes, words can bring me.
However, Wet Hot American Summer subverts our expectations of how queer characters are treated at the turn of the century. Later, JJ and Gary show up in the crowded cafeteria to confront the boys.
Have you seen JJ and Gary? Do you know where they are? Don't know. Yeah, I'm a little worried they might have found out about us.
Hey! McKinley and Ben! This is for you.
It's a chaise lounge. We didn't know if maybe you guys already had one. We have the receipt if you do.
No, we don't have one. Thank you.
It goes with the chenille throw cloth. Sister gave us.
This obvious subversion to what would typically be a homophobic punchline within its cultural context is satirized using theatricality effects and camp. Not only did Wet Hot make some of its leading characters canonically queer and three-dimensional, they showed them being loved and accepted by their peers, something practically non-existent in film at the time of its release. Wet Hot American Summer is full of 20 to 30-somethings acting like hormonal teens, and there is much grotesque saliva swapping. However, one scene in the movie was treated differently than the rest. The only sex scene in the film is a queer one between McKinley and Ben, and it sets itself apart from the rest of the campy, low-budget film. It uses reality effects in juxtaposition to the rest of the film's theatricality effects. It was beautifully lit, the acting was serious and not comic at all, and the actors were even coated in gel to make the scene seem more realistic. In an interview between Bradley Cooper, who plays Ben, and Seth Meyers, they agree it's a very moving sex scene.
Yeah, a very moving sex scene. I don't know why
it was very
everybody's
moving.
laughing.
Yeah. Like the whole movie's jokes, and then that one he's like dead, shot seriously, lit well. Yeah.
And it was.
This scene is worth noting for its progressive point of view of treating queer relationships as serious and a real way of existing, not just to be played for laughs. In these examples, Wayne uses overt theatricality and camp, or a distinct lack thereof, to confront the audience, to question their ideologies and expectations. The absurdist humor asks viewers to question what they expected to happen instead, and to reflect on why they had these expectations. Furthermore, having these characters exist in storylines outside of their queerness are early examples of canonically queer characters who don't exist solely to be queer. They are three-dimensional, and their queerness is taken very seriously throughout the film. Another way Wet Hot American Summer subverts regressive ideologies in the film is through using overt theatricality in the storyline between Katie, Andy, and Coop. At first glance, this storyline is your typical love triangle. The hot popular girl is being courted by both the dogged nice guy, Coop, and the hot asshole, Andy. Throughout the film, Katie goes back and forth trying to decide between Coop and Andy with satirical takes on common romantic tropes that use theatricality effects.
It's cold.
Yeah, I'm freezing.
Do you want my sweatshirt? I love you! I love you, Gerald Cooperberg.
However, at the end of the movie, the storyline takes an unexpected but progressive turn. Typically with these tropes, the woman quote-unquote realizes that she'll be treated better with the nice guy, despite clearly not being into him for the entire film, resulting in the nice guy finally getting the validation he was so desperately seeking from his conquest. In Wet Hot, they give Katie back her agency and center her needs and desires, that simply being sexual pleasure.
So that's where my priorities are right now. Sex, specifically with Andy and not with you. But you're really nice.
As a matter of fact, there isn't any slut-shaming in the entire film. In her article, We Love You, Abby Bernstein, The Lack of Slut-Shaming in Wet Hot American Summer, Erin Thompson speaks on the phenomenon, writing about the agency both Katie and Abby Bernstein hold in their desires and sexuality. If this is the kind of treatment Wayne and Showalter give women, we need to have more people looking to these two guys for how to write female roles. Because after all, no one should have to apologize for their sexual actions, especially not a girl who knows herself. Within the context of the misogynistic era where the majority of female roles are two-dimensional and written only as plot devices in men's stories, the agency Wayne gives his female characters is uniquely progressive for this era, where women are often measured by their attractiveness and how they fit into the Madonna whore complex.
Hey? I was just saying, Jeffrey didn't contact you either to tell you that the Tarts and Vickers concept had gone out of the window.
Oh, yes, he did.
Oh, right. Lovely dress.
There is so much more to discuss about the progressive views of Wet Hot American Summer, especially as it pertains to the taboo topic of mental health. In Gail's storyline, they normalize the idea of therapy. Gail is going through a divorce and realizes talking about her emotions, even if it's to a room full of children who seem to be incredibly emotionally mature, helps her heal.
That's who he is, and you can't change it. Okay?
Gene is a Vietnam War vet who is struggling with his PTSD, albeit in a very absurdist way. He is constantly trying to hide his off-kilter Freudian slips from his sous chef Gary and receives guidance from a talking can of vegetables. By the end, he does a very patriotic and absurdly theatrical speech to the cafeteria, proclaiming radical self-love and self-acceptance in the wake of his new reality, a message that's much ahead of its time.
Be proud of who you are!
Ultimately, Wet Hot American Summer's use of overt theatricality, camp, reality, and theatricality effects, and theatrical failure position it uniquely in the context of its failed 2001 release. This film, for its time, was much more progressive in its meta-humor and its progressive handling of taboo topics. By using these devices and signals, Wet Hot American Summer begs the audience, through absurdist and camp humor, to question what they are watching and what they expect to happen next, and why that is their expectation. By representing queer and female characters in a way that wasn't popular at the time, Wet Hot became better the more it aged. However, it isn't a perfect film. There's still much to criticize about certain choices that were made. Some jokes didn't age well, such as a camp counselor, Gail, becoming engaged to a child at the end of the film. Despite a few shortcomings, overall the film has grown into a culturally iconic artifact that both reflects the values of coming-of-age films from the 80s to the 2000s, and helps shape how we perceive women and queerness on screen in a more progressive way, while introducing us to an early example of popular meta-comedy that we know and love today.